Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining. Great seeing you all here to the September community meeting. For those of you that this is the first time, how we usually try to structure this is we'll start doing an introduction, just talking about the health and some metrics of the community. And in this case today, we have Erica from Loggi. She's going to explain to us how they have been implementing and using open metadata at their company. And today, the final part of the agenda is going to be a deep dive into the product. And in this case, we are actually going to go and discuss all of the different steps that you can actually take on your first day from nothing into your first ingestions using open metadata so that you can get excited. You can see how easy it is to spin things up and go from hero to zero with open metadata. And as always, we'll try to leave some minutes at the end for any Q&A, any outstanding question that you would have from Erica's presentation or from anything else that we discussed today, so we can just have more of a relaxed chat. We can unmute, we can have a conversation, and keep jumping into any topic that you need from today's meeting. And that being said, let's just start with the community stats. I always like to see how we get new and new open source developers every month. And what it's been awesome in this case is that we have crossed and by far the 5,000 GitHub stars. If you have not yet started the project, this is one of the easiest ways that you can help us into spreading the word, into making sure that open metadata keeps appearing in the feeds from someone else, and see how also they can benefit from the work that we're all putting on here. The community Slack grew a lot since the last community meeting, almost 500 new members. So if you are not there in Slack, this is the best place where you can actually interact with anyone in the community, be it from the committers of the Open Metadata project itself, or even if you have any other question, you are seeking advice, there's a lot of people that they have been in production for quite some time, and I'm sure that they would be super happy also to chip in and share their experiences. And finally, if you are not following us yet on Twitter or Meetup, you can get in their announcements for the new releases, for meetings such as today, so that you are not missing any new pieces that we are bringing up for the community. In terms of actual numbers, the PRs keep growing and growing and growing. As you can see here, we were close to the release, so we did more than 100 PRs in a week, and then we just came back to the usual pace between 50 to 75 PRs every week, which is a very big amount of work that comes from the internal team that we have at Collate, as well from all of the contributors. Then in terms of Slack, we are always going past 100 questions, 100 new threads that are appearing in support. So if you have any issues, if you don't know where to start, if you need any help into making the most out of open metadata, feel free to reach out in support. And if you're a veteran, and if you already know the answer, you had that exact same pain, make sure that also you are jumping in, you are chipping in, and we can all make sure that everyone is successful with open metadata. And if we take a look at the growth of month over month on the full posts that we have in here, the tendency keeps growing. August, people on vacations, but I still like where this line is going. And then just quick clap for the 10 community contributions that we had from the last meetup up until today. So if you would like just to get started into playing with the code, feel free to reach out to us on the contributors channel. We have a bunch of tickets, a bunch of good first issues that you can take directly from GitHub. So if you would like to get started in the open source world, just read them out, comment if you would like to participate in there, and we can assign them to you. We can help you get started and whatnot. And even if there's something that you feel like it's not working as it should be, but it is still not yet listed out as an issue, feel free to just raise a PR and we can have a conversation and actually check if this is something that it's going to benefit the full community or not. So we really welcome all of the contributions. We would be happy to see you on this list as well. So thank you all, both the people that are new contributors, as well as those that are repeated here. So thank you very much. And with that being said, I'm going to pass the baton to Erica, and she's going to show us how they are using open metadata at Loggi. So thank you, Erica, for being here, and the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thanks OM community for having me. James can share the presentation.
Sure. 1 second, please. Erica's quite the trooper today. There's a fire happening near her, so she's safe. But there's a fire near her, so it's been putting her internet connectivity at risk. So we're defaulting to Plan B just to make sure that if anything happens, we can still hear Erica's story on how she's using open metadata at Loggi.
Yes, thank you, James. Hello, everyone, again. I'm Erica. Today, I'm going to talk about how open metadata helps us in data governance here at Loggi. And next slide, please. Before that, let me introduce myself quickly. I'm Erica. I'm an analytics engineering manager here at Loggi, and I lead a team of 5. And I have a quite mixed up experience in tech because I graduated in computer science. And because of that, I had the wonderful experience of working in good performance software and engineering teams, working with microservices, for example. And I also had the opportunity to work with analytics close to the business context of the company, dealing with analysis, visualization tools, data modeling, etc. Next slide, please. The other one, next. Let me introduce you Loggi. Let me introduce Loggi to you. And Loggi has more than 10 years operating the logistics market here in Brazil. We deliver more than 300,000 packages every day. We have hubs and distribution centers in the 27 federal states of the country, which means all of them. And throughout the years, we captured more than $1 billion from investors like SoftBank and Microsoft. And in 2019, we became a Brazilian unicorn. And for the ones who don't know what that means, it's just the company is evaluated in $1 billion and it's not available for stock exchange at the moment. And okay, when we talk about logistics in Brazil, it's necessary to brief people about 2 things. And the first one is that Brazil is a continental country. And because of that, we deal with complexity in the logistic chain. That's a fact. It's not straightforward to deliver packages in the big country. And the second thing is that there is not only one way of delivering things. For example, I live in Manaus, which is a city that is in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. And because of that, because of the forest, we don't have paved highways that connects us to the central states and the states closer to the Atlantic coast, where we can buy things on the internet and ask for delivery in Manaus. This is a problem because every time Loggi, for example, delivers to Manaus, it is by plane, and this is more expensive to the final customer. Okay. And added to the complexity of the dimensions of Brazil, we have more than 2,000 workers across the country, using and also producing new data. And this leads us to the theme of this presentation, which is governance, okay? We can go to the next slide, please, James. Thank you. And having that said, let me reduce the scope of the presentation, because in this one, I'm gonna walk you through data governance here at the moment, what works for us and how open metadata has been helping us through this journey, okay? And unfortunately, because of the time slot, we won't deep dive into tools, technical aspects of our infrastructure, and the pros and cons of our tech stack here at Loggi. Next slide, please, James. Thank you. Next one. Okay, let's start the presentation by exploring the problems we were facing a bit. And there were several problems by the time my team was created, and this is just a summary, right? The first problem was that it was very common for our colleagues to Slack everyone, asking about which team or person had the context to explain the business rule of a given model or ask other questions. It was common to talk to 4 or 5 people to answer this simple first question. Who can I ask about the business context of this model? Crazy, right? And by this time, we had almost 500 models in DBT, our modeling framework, and without defined owners, and almost 10,000 tables in Redshift, our warehouse. So it was really a pain to get to the starting point. Next slide, please. Right, thank you. The second struggle was about data organization. People used to struggle to find out which table was the correct one to be used to produce other insights and answer new business questions. And this led, naturally, the entire data team to be less efficient, of course, because how can people even start modeling if they don't know the proper tables and their meaning for what they need, right? Next slide, please. The third problem was regarding data reporting inconsistencies. And this is still a problem for us. We are working on it. And we've been using Looker, that is our visualization tool, for more than 10 years of Loggi. And we never took a moment to reorganize everything that was built there. And one consequence was that we achieved the milestone of 18,000 dashboards and looks in Looker. And because of that, we gathered a lot of metrics that were similar, repeated, and people didn't know which one could they trust or look at. And the names were similar, and this led people to bring questions to the chapter team. And yeah, naturally, of course. Next, please. And next, we also had the complexity of our data models, which could be really painful to the data teams and other teams that are not very technical. For example, we have these 2 tables, package events versus package register. Which one should I use to count packages? This is a fair question. And yeah, so this is a summary of what was our landscape before we started using OpenMetadata. Next slide, please. Given these problems, I'd like to give you a hint of what was our environment. And this is our big numbers today, and considering that we performed some interventions since 2023. Next slide, please. So we have 100 terabytes in our data warehouse, which is Redshift, 42 terabytes in our lakehouse. We are running 2 infrastructures by now. And we have 200 gigabytes of new data every day, 9 million of new records of packages tracking every day. We have almost 100 ETL jobs, being the midnight job the most important because it updates almost 500 tables in 8 hours after midnight. We have almost 10,000 tables in our warehouse. We have almost 800 Looker users, almost 2,000 Looker dashboards, and people use Looker to perform analysis in in 2.5 hours in average every single day. Next slide, please. So how OpenMetadata helps us to deal with these big numbers? Next slide, please. The first win for us was the definition of ownership, because in order to help people to find who could help them to answer questions about modeling business rules in a given model, we organized the DBT models and declared the ownership of these models. And added to that, this helps us every time there is an incident with the data of a given DBT model. Okay, thank you, Perry. And for example, revenue composition, the finance invoicing team that helps other teams to perform other analysis. Next slide, please. Another use case that is very helpful for us was the feature of data lineage, because every time we have to deploy a model update, we know the possible impacts of the forwarding on the forwarding lineage. We also benefit from this feature when a model gets to the end of its life. We deprecate the use of it in every model that preferences it, and the lineage helps us to get this job done. And next slide, please. Getting to the highlight of this presentation, in my opinion, we used OpenMetadata to perform the deletion of dated dashboards. I said previously that we had almost 18,000 dashboards and looks, and we were able to delete the majority of them and reduce it to the number of almost 2,000 dashboards. And you can ask me, how do we achieve that? And the first step was to list all dashboards, and we run a deletion plan communication to the company. And after that, people marked what was important to them and their teams. And at last, we could delete what wasn't claimed as important or used. And now OM shows us what was deleted, and this helps us to delete dated code in Looker as well, as you can see in this example. Next slide, please. Next useful feature for us is catalog, because catalog has been helping us to start to find the right tables and columns to start modeling. And my team invested time in the past 3 months to catalog almost 500 tables. And the AI team, for example, could use the OM API to access one of these catalogs and train a model, for example. And as you can see, we have Portuguese and English descriptions here in the columns and in the table as well. Next slide, please. And getting to the data quality, that is a feature that solidified us of OM, the use of OM for us, because data quality feature is helping us to run checks in the most important data sources and models, and helped us to be more proactive about incidents involving our most important data. Everything is connected. Next slide, please. And working together with the data quality feature, we have an alert channel that triggers. We use the alert feature, and we have an alert channel that triggers us every time the data behaves different from what we expected, as you can see in this example, and people interact to discover, to find out what happened. So this helps us to be more proactive and helps us in the observability as well. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll be quick because we're running out of time. And this is just a timeline of these different efforts. And as I said previously, this is a marathon, not a sprint. The second 2023 semester, we were focused on cleaning the house. We worked on defining ownerships of DBT models, model refactoring. Okay, good. we worked on defining ownerships of the DBT models, model refactoring, and the deletion of the 16,000 dashboards and looks from Looker, as I presented you previously. In the first 2024 semester, in the beginning of this year, our goal was to improve trust and organize the most important metrics of the company. And we tested and deployed more than 17 test cases of data quality in our most important models. And we also worked on the catalog. And in the second 2024 semester, which is happening right now, we are now working on governance and deleting almost 7,000 tables from Redshift, recovering almost $2,000 every month in the Redshift billing. And we are organizing model sets and permissions on Looker. And with OM, we could delete 50% of dated models. And we also pretend to work on data quality and refine organization of our metadata on OM. And in 2025, in the future, we are working on this. It's a work in progress. And we've started planning right now. So it's the next chapter here. And next slide. I think this is it. Thanks again for the invite. It is the landscape of what is happening in data governance here at Loggi. I'm open for questions. I don't know if now or by the end of the meeting, but you can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. I will be open and happy to answer other questions as well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Erica. Obrigado. It was a great presentation. Any questions that you have right now for Erica, please put them on the chat. We can keep moving the conversation in there. And we'll also try to give some minutes at the end if we can have a more of a live discussion. But as she said, she's also available on LinkedIn. She's also very active on Slack. So if you would like to move this conversation with the rest of the community, feel free also to ping her or anyone else that you would like to have the discussion directly there. And we can keep pulling the thread. I really enjoyed that 16,000 number of dashboards and models properly deleted. That's basically the power, no? You bring everything, you figure it out, you understand it, but at least just having this vehicle, no, to start having these conversations, to start empowering all of these projects from the governance office is basically what we are trying to solve here. So thank you very much for sharing your experience.
There are questions. We can, if you want to handle it right now, there are questions on the chat.
Okay, let's take, yeah, well, we are okay. We can take 3 minutes now. I think that one question from Michael is, any important lessons learned during your adoption of OpenMetadata?
Lessons learned. We learned a lot of our data itself in the company. And these numbers that I presented you today, it was a reflection of that, because OpenMetadata helps us to organize this information and people adopt it. People see value on it in the company because of this organization. It was a pain to us, and people value what OpenMetadata brings us in regarding data organization. So this is one of the most important lessons I can answer you.
Awesome, thanks. Then the last one, and we'll continue with the agenda. Do you usually use the testing modules in OpenMetadata? If so, did the test case help solve any serious business problems?
Sorry, what was this question?
Yeah, sorry, I guess that the question is if you are using the native OpenMetadata data quality module, or maybe you're using DBT or something different there.
I am using the data native data quality framework, not using others by now.
Okay, awesome. So, well, happy to hear that. Happy to see how it's succeeding, or at least help you and your team succeed at Loggi. Keep shooting any questions. We can jump on them at the end. And as we were saying, we can keep the conversation open on the Slack community. But for now, let me share my screen, because one of the key pieces when we're talking about open metadata is that we are building something that goes way beyond a data catalog. No? And Erika here is the live example when even at Loggi, they are also using the native data quality modules here. And that's why we say that open metadata is this open and unified metadata platform for discovery, for observability, and for governance, which means that there's a lot of things that open metadata as a platform is bringing on the table. So we can get the metadata, the lineage, usage, profile your data, get all the data quality validations in there. You can explore your data if you are an end user. You can have this end-to-end life cycle from bringing the metadata in to handling the data quality test, getting this observability system. You can collaborate, you can define your business language, you can define your domains, data products, and so on and so forth. No, that's a lot of features. That's a lot of content, a lot that you can actually achieve when you are starting to use open metadata. And what we are trying to answer today is the question, where do I start? So for the rest of the meeting, we are going to actually help you on your first day using open metadata on how you can set it up on your own laptop, how you can set up a data connector, start ingesting metadata, and how you can invite the rest of the users in your organization to keep giving them already this value and keep moving on with the collaboration features that we are bringing here. Now, the first step would be on how we can actually bring open metadata directly into our laptops. And a typical open metadata user might actually just land on our landing page. So from here, we can see all of the right features, all of the great people such as Loggi that is using the solution. And if I scroll down, I'm going to see how there are different ways that I can try open metadata. One is deploying it directly, which is what we're going to do now. In this case, I'm going to be the admin on the system. I'm starting from scratch and I have complete liberty, complete freedom on anything that I want to achieve with the platform. The second way is that we have a live sandbox. So in case that you just want to look around, you are a bit curious on how open metadata looks like from an end user perspective, this will give you a chance to start exploring in a system that already has some data in it. In this case, you won't be able to ingest your own systems, but you still will be able to start jumping here, exploring the metadata, and playing a bit with the features that we are offering here. Or finally, if you are interested in the managed version of open metadata that we're bringing from Collate, there is also the approach that you can take on starting to play with our free SaaS service. But today, I'm actually going to focus on how we can deploy, how we can go from zero into having a really nice instance in my laptop that I can start playing with. So I'm just going to click here on download now. And this is directing me into the quick start documentation. And as you can see, there's some requirements. No? So the easiest way to get open metadata up and running is via Docker. So the first thing that I would need to validate is that I have the right Docker version and the right Docker Compose version. So I'm going to do that. And I'm starting from scratch. I don't have anything here. So I'm going to check my Docker version, and I'm 26, which is greater than 20. So I'm happy. And now I'm going to check my Docker Compose version as well. And I'm indeed on version 2.1 or greater. So I have all of the requirements. I can move on. Then the second step is how can I download the required Docker Compose files from the GitHub releases. So in this case, you can see here how we have these curl commands. We have one if you want to run OpenMetadata with MySQL, or another one if you want to run OpenMetadata with Postgres. In the end, this is only going to change the backend database. Just for simplicity, I'm going to take the first one. So I'm here. I don't have the Docker Compose yet. Going to get it. Now it's appearing. And this means that I can start running the instance. In this case, I'm not going to run it as detached because I actually want to see all of my logs in there so that I can also show you how everything looks like when we're starting the service. But if you're running it on your laptop, make sure that you are passing this detached so that you can jump into other terminals, you can do other things, and this service is not going to get down. So I'm just going to copy this part. And I'm going to start running this. This is the first time that you're actually doing these steps. It might take a few more minutes, right? Because what this is going to do is going to take all of the images that are publicly available in Docker Hub for MySQL, Elasticsearch, the OpenMetadata server itself, plus our ingestion system. So you might need to wait these minutes for the Docker to actually pull all of this information. But in just, as I was saying, 5 minutes tops, you should start seeing all of these logs where the database is getting ready, the server is getting ready, and now in just a few more seconds, I should be able to jump into my cleanly and new installed OpenMetadata instance. Going just to jump, I didn't have anything here yet, and now I'm able to at least get something on my local host, right? So just a step is done. I'm going to sign in with this admin@openmetadata.org. That's the user that we're giving out by default on these quick start files. And the password is going to be admin. And I log in. I don't need to change any password yet. And everything is looking good on my end. So the first step will be, how can I actually bring the metadata into my system, right? How can I actually start into getting all of these nice results? And the first thing that I need to do is to go into settings and click on services. When we are talking about services in the world of open metadata, we are talking about this bridge between the open metadata world and the reality that you have in your organization. And we have more than 80 connectors that we are bringing out of the box for you to start automatically extracting all of these high-value metadata that is becoming more and more critical in your systems. And we support services from databases, messaging services, dashboard pipelines, and whatnot. So you can come here and start exploring which of these pieces we have right there. What I'm going to do now is going to jump into my database services, and I'm going to add a new database service. In this case, I have prepared beforehand a small Snowflake playground instance. So I'm just going to jump in here, and I'm going to give a name to this service. Okay, this name is how I'm then going to be able to identify all of the databases and schemas and tables and whatnot that will also belong to this service here. So make sure that you're giving something meaningful, something that actually helps you understand which piece of data, which environment this specific instance is living in. Now, when I click on next, the UI itself is going to help me understand which steps I need to take in order to actually being able to connect, in this case, to my Snowflake instance, and start getting out the right metadata. I have the credentials. So I'm just going to start putting them here. And one thing that I find pretty cool is that all of the documentation is already here. So if I keep jumping from field to field, the documentation is actually going to highlight me what these fields means, if there's any example that I can take into account in order to make my life even easier when I'm just trying to figure out from zero which pieces of information we need to bring here. And now I'm actually going to make up the password here. I'm going to fix it later, but for now, I'm just going to make it up. And when I click onto the account, going to paste it there, I have a meetup database. That's the one that I want to start ingesting. My warehouse is the compute warehouse. And what is very interesting is that I can test the connection directly from the UI. Because before jumping into the pool, before starting to run ingestion processes or whatnot, I want to make sure that the pieces of information that I gave here are the right pieces of information. And in this case, I can already see that, hey, I'm failing to connect to Snowflake. Please provide the valid credentials. And this message is telling me, hey, there's an incorrect username or password, which makes sense because I actually made up the password. Now I'm going to put the right one. But as you can see, we are trying to make it as easy, as straightforward as possible for you to, just from the very beginning, understand and figure out if you are really able to connect to the source. Are we passing the right pieces of information? Does this user have the right permissions? Is there maybe a firewall or any other networking rule that it's blocking this access? So we want to make sure that we are validating all of these pieces as soon as possible. Once I'm happy, click on OK, save the service. So I've saved this connection, I saved this bridge, and now I can start creating the ingestion workflows. These processes that will connect, in this case to my Snowflake instance, will start grabbing the information that is interesting for me and will send that information into my OpenMetadata instance. I'm going to click here into add ingestion, and I actually just want to get the metadata out of my meta database and my demo schema. So one thing that you can do, especially if you are just figuring things out, you can start small. You can start with the most important schema that you might have in your organization, or at least the one that you know the most, so that you can also use that to validate if you are getting the right information or not out of these systems. And the rest of the configurations here, I'm just going to leave them as default, going to click on next. And as you can see, there are different ways that you can schedule this process, because the idea is not for you just to run it once and forget. We want to also have updated metadata. We also want to know if new changes are happening, tables are appearing, tables are disappearing from your systems. But if you are not sure when you are getting started, how often do you actually need this metadata to be refreshed? You can maybe just set it weekly for it to run Mondays, whenever it is that you don't have that much load into your databases, get it deployed. And then when we are jumping into our service, you will see how this process has been created into our ingestion step. In any case, you are not forced, right, to actually wait for this schedule to happen. I don't want to wait now until the next Monday at midnight in order for this to run. You can click here on the three dots and you can trigger the service. You can edit the ingestion if needed. If something is getting too long, you can kill it. You can delete the workflow. So any kind of process, any kind of operation on top of these workflows, you can manage them directly from the OpenMetadata UI. Now, as we can see, this process is running. We can also check logs, and well, looks like it already finished. And I'm super happy, not because I get a 100% success rate and it only took 20 seconds to bring all of this information in. So now I can jump back into my service and I can see that I have one database, I have one schema, and I start to see some tables that have been automatically extracted from there. What I can also do is I can come here, and if I look for the customer information, I can see how I also have this customer code table, which has some nice descriptions on the table, some nice descriptions on the columns. I can also see that there's a primary key. So all of this information, I'm able to pick it up automatically from the source system itself, and I can start adding owner information. So I can add, for example, myself as an admin and whatnot. But if I jump into the lineage, for example, I see that, okay, this part is still empty, but I know that this customer gold table actually gets created from some other tables that I have in my source system. So let's see now how can we actually bridge that gap. I'm going to go back into my Snowflake service. And as you can see, I can actually add other ingestions. And we have different workflows that they are actually in charge of extracting different pieces of information. The one that we used right now is the metadata one, which takes databases, schemas, descriptions, so your typical topical base metadata system. But in this case, I also want to see the lineage information. So let's click on it. I'm not going to add any filter. I'm just going to leave it by default. And this is going to look at the query history on my Snowflake for the past day, for the past 24 hours. And based on the queries that have been executed on that instance, it's going to automatically pick up the lineage information. So I'm going to also set this every week. But because I'm impatient, let's run it now. So again, this now started to run. As long as it's running, we can pick up the last execution logs directly from the UI. And actually now we see that, okay, this failed. And I see that, okay, in my logs, there's some error creating lineage for my Snowflake service because there's a table that has not been found, which is this Snowflake sample data customer table, which makes sense because we started filtering out the metadata. I really don't have this table in my system. So this error is okay. I don't have anything to worry about. I can jump back into my customer code table. And from here, now if I take a look at the lineage is not there. So I guess that now I have some demo effect going on. Let me just clean up the indexes just in case. This indexing application is the one that you can use if you start seeing weird things on the Explorer, weird things that are not properly appearing on the lineage. We use Elasticsearch to actually populate all of that information. So you can actually play from here. You can control how this is going to behave. So I'm just going to execute it once, make sure that everything gets properly clean, and then I'm just going to execute the lineage ingestion once again. I'm jumping into my Snowflake. I'm going to trigger the lineage, make sure that now I do know which tables I need to pick up. We're just going to give this process a few more seconds. Now I see the same logs, I see the same errors. That's okay for me. And now I'm just going to jump into my customers code table. And now, perfect, I'm actually able to see this lineage, and not only at the table level, but also at the column level. And this is super powerful because I did not have to do absolutely anything. Just from the UI, I started getting the metadata, I started getting the lineage information, and I can already see how these tables are related to each other. And if I actually click here on the edge, click on the transformation, I even have the actual query that was used to create my customer code by joining my customer and orders table, which is awesome. So now we are covering half of the equation here. Now I'm covering all of the tables, all of the metadata that I have into my Snowflake, which makes BI people happy, like BI analysts, BI engineers, and data engineers as well. But what happens to the insights that we are trying to get? What happens if we are actually using this table to create some charts out of it? So let's just ingest some more metadata. Going to click again on services, going to click now on dashboards. And from here, I'm going to jump into Tableau. I'm going to give it a very nice name and paste all of the right information. In this case, I'll try to give the right one on the first go because we already saw how the test connection is going to look like. And those is going to put what the laptop remembers. And let's test the connection. And as you can see, the actual validations that we're doing, in this case, they are different. No, and this is super important because we have our own internal validation system. We have our own specific definitions for each of the connectors and what it means for us to have a successful test connection. So in this case, everything is clean again. I'm going to save it. And when I'm adding the ingestion, I was talking about the lineage. No, this is the critical part for me. That's the most important piece of information that I would like at least to get today out of this exercise. As you can see, there's this lineage information piece that it's letting me know, hey, add some database service names. And what the documentation is going to tell me is that for the process, in order for it to be able to understand, for it to be able to pick up the right source of truth for the models and the dashboards that we have defined in Tableau, I need to let him know where these tables actually belong. So these tables, I know that they belong in Snowflake. So I'm going to put, this is the service name that I was telling before I gave it Snowflake. So I'm just going to leave that here. And I'm also going to filter for my meetup project. Click on next. And another handy thing is that we're just playing around or whatnot. We can even run these processes when they are not even scheduled. So I can take the schedule as none, the process still gets deployed, and I'm still able to run the metadata directly. Another interesting thing that we can do with all of these pipelines while this runs is that we can also pause the processes. So maybe these failures are actually important for me. Maybe I'm actually not able to get any relevant piece of metadata since this is failing. So while I figure it out, I really don't want this process to run again. So I can just come, I pause it, and then follow up schedules they are going to be skipped. And let's see if Tableau is done. We can take a look. It's still running. As you can see, we check the server, we check the client versions, we validate the test connections results as well. Whenever we are running all of these workflows, we want to make sure that we are running against something that we can properly reach. And in this case, I'm happy again, 100% and around 40 seconds to ingest this information. So I can see how I have a couple of dashboards. Dashboards they are very simple. They just have one sheet inside, and I have a few data models, one of them being the published data source from Tableau, and the other being the embedded data source of Tableau. They just share the display name, but internally, they are different systems. And now I want to get back into my customer gold table and see how the lineage looks like. This case, I see that I'm coming from the orders and customer tables. This is feeding my customer goal table, and this is actually being used on this model that is derived on this published data source, derives on this embedded data source up until I get into the dashboard. And if I take a look at the column lineage, I can actually check, for example, how the name information gets propagated from the root of my lineage up until it's close to reach our dashboards. And this is already giving me very valuable information because I can see that in this case, my customer goal table is used for two looks like different dashboards, but that they are actually having very similar data models. So this is already telling me that, hey, maybe there's two teams that need to talk more to each other so that we can actually come here, start deleting, and start simplifying all of this modeling. And maybe these two dashboards can all of them come from the same source. So we were able to get all of this brilliant metadata just out of a few clicks directly from the UI. So this is why we say that we have these native connectors, how we have this full UI support where you really don't need to jump into any depths in order to start getting such valuable information. And what is important, all of your data stays in the source system. We're only going to ship back into OpenMetadata the results of any queries, any API calls that are giving us all of this metadata that we are showing directly from the UI. Now, this is fine for most of the systems. So in this case, I connected into Snowflake, that's a cloud provider. I connected into my Tableau line, that's also a cloud provider. But what happens if I have private sources? What happens if I cannot make sure if my OpenMetadata instance is going to be able to connect to all of my important pieces of information? So in that case, we also have you covered because we are providing a CLI tool that you can install directly from your laptop. And I'm going to show you now the steps that we can take in order to make this run. So I'm here into my laptop and I created a virtual environment just to make sure that all of the different pieces are properly isolated. This is really not mandatory. And what I want to start doing is I want to do the same exercise. I want to start getting up the Snowflake and the Tableau metadata, but directly from the CLI. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to jump into the docs. And from the documentation, let's take a look at Snowflake. And what it's very nice is that I have this tab here for running the process externally. And this is telling me the package that I need to install. So I'm going to do that now. Going to pip install OpenMetadata. Now I'm just going to put Snowflake. And since I'm in the 1.5.4 version, I'm just going to install this Python package in there. I already have it installed, so nothing is happening. And the other important piece of information that I can get from here, aside of the permissions to connect to the instance and whatnot, which we validated before, I know that now I just need to define all of the same configuration in a YAML file. So I'm going to jump here, and in my ingestions tab, as you can see, I have a couple of YAML files that I already cooked. So if we take a look at my Snowflake, in this case, I'm putting a different service name just to make sure that I'm not confusing things, but the rest of the properties, they are the same. What's my username, what's my password, the account, the database, the filters, and all of these pieces, I just actually taken from the example that I have on the documentation. Once I have this set up, I can say, hey, let's ingest the YAML that I have in the ingestion directory for my Snowflake. So this is going to run, and as you can see, these logs, we saw these logs before when we were checking the logs of the execution directly from the UI, because we're actually doing the same. We are executing the same code, the same Python code, but instead of letting OpenMetadata manage that and running it on the OpenMetadata cluster, I'm actually taking control and I'm saying, okay, this is the YAML configuration, this is the Python version, this is the OpenMetadata server that I'm actually pointing to, and I'm just going to let that run. And it took 17 seconds, and I get all of the right information. And I'm just going to do the same for Tableau. So I can take a look here at Tableau. Go again into the run externally, and it's just same pip install, but I need to make sure that I'm bringing the packages required for Tableau. So I'm just going to do pip install. I can actually reuse the same and just keep putting that into commas. That's all fine. Again, I already had this installed, so now what I can do is just run it with Tableau. And same thing is going to happen while this runs. Let me just show you how this one YAML looks like. It's the same. It looks really, really similar. The only difference is that in this case, I'm pointing towards a Tableau instance with whatever specific username, password, hostport, whatever it is that makes sense for Tableau. But the important part is that we have here all of the templates that we can use to make sure that we are passing the right YAML configuration. So let this finish, and while it finishes, let's see if I already have some data here. I see that I have my Snowflake from CLI that I ingested. I have the exact same data because I was running with the exact same filters. And if I take a look with the lineage, let's see if Tableau finished. I need to just let it run again. But in the end, we are going to see the exact same results, regardless of where it's the origin of our executions. And now, just to close it for today, how can we invite users? We added all of the metadata. It doesn't matter if it comes from Snowflake, if it comes from Tableau, if it comes from whichever other connector that we support. Out of the box, when you are just trying OpenMetadata, the authentication is via this user password. So we can just go into the UI, jump into our teams and user management, and say, hey, I want to invite a new user. So I can come and I can say, hey, maybe whatever user, we can let the automatically generated password, or if we don't have any mailing system cleared yet, we can just create the password manually. Just going to add something now. And I'm not going to add it at admin yet. I'm just going to let this user be part of the general population of the platform, because I also want to show you, once a user is created, how you can actually promote it to become an administrator and help you navigate the tool, help you create all of these ingestions or any other configuration that you need in the platform. So I can click now on this user, and if I expand the top panel, you see how we have the roles specified here. If we edit the roles, there are certain roles that we bring by default. One of these roles is the admin. So now we just save it, and whenever this user connects, I'm going just to do it now. I'm demo at meetup, connecting now. I'm new, I'm welcomed, and I have all of the same nice permissions as any other admin in the tool. So next steps here. Feel free to try it out. Feel free to download the Docker. Feel free to play with it. You can, as we said, we also have the sandbox. We also have the collate free tier if you're interested into the managed service. We have great how-to guides, really, that they are going to give you some in-depth steps on how you can do the data discovery in the platform, how you can maybe create the task, how do you manage the conversations, the requests from descriptions, from tags, how you can start the journey with the data quality and observability, how you can also manage and play with the data lineage. So definitely a lot of great content that you can actually take from the documentation. And as we were saying, you are more than welcome to join our Slack. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us on the support channel, and then we can give you a hand into making sure that your road with OpenMetadata into production is as successful as possible. And that's it from our side. Thank you very much. I just done in time, but I guess that we can maybe take a couple of minutes in case that there are a few questions, either about what we presented, for Erica's presentation. We can just take some more time to answer anything that you have in mind.
We have a lot of thanks coming in the chat. As always, please find us on the Slack if you have any additional things that you want to follow up with either Erica and Bray. Again, Erica, thanks so much for your commitment to hop on, even with fires nearby and unstable internet. We really learned a lot from your story. So find us on Slack. We also run office hours if you want to go more in depth with getting things up and running with OpenMetadata. And thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone. We'll upload the recording to YouTube. Give us a couple of days to get things ready. We'll get the recording, we'll get the slides, and hope to see you on the next one. Thank you all. See you later.